Harvard University professor Avi Loeb said he wasn't surprised by NASA's announcement of 3I Atlas. Despite many expecting it to be a window into other solar systems, Loeb said that when asked what he expected just an hour before the press conference, he expected no major breakthroughs. He said NASA would likely just repeat its usual claim that 3I Atlas was a natural comet with data processing delayed due to the government shutdown. Loeb even said the new images were just hazy halos similar to Hubble's, and they were, despite his faint hopes for a surprise. Loeb said that while NASA has released a lot of new data, it has not yet provided any significant clues about the nature of the object. He said that much of the data is just a rehash of what has already been observed from Hubble, the FAREX instrument on James Webb, and SWIFT, even additional data from Lucy, MAVEN, SOHO, and ground-based observatories has yielded only fuzzy, lifeless images. Loeb noted that researchers would certainly like to see more images, even if they don't promise anything new. He pointed specifically to MAVEN's results, which detected hydrogen in the spectrometer, an indicator of how quickly water is being released, since hydrogen comes from the breakdown of water molecules. This matched earlier detections of hydroxyl radicals from the Meerkat radio telescope, which were confirmed in a report published in early November. Loeb said these pieces of the puzzle could help calculate 3I Atlas's water production. However, he stressed that the James Webb data showed carbon dioxide predominating over water. From all of that, Loeb concludes that the most important questions regarding 3I Atlas, whether it is unusual, potentially man-made, or contains something beyond the traditional comet model, remain completely unanswered. He does not rule out the possibility that there are things that NASA has not said or not seen making 3I Atlas, a mysterious subject that has attracted a lot of speculation and curiosity among scientists and the space-loving community. Stay tuned, because what happens next will blow your mind. If you are fascinated by the mystery of 3I Atlas and want to see more amazing cosmic stories, hit that like button and let the universe know you are watching. Every click helps keep the quest for the unknown alive. Comment below and let me know where you are watching this from. I want to see what corners of the world are witnessing this with me. Professor Avi Loeb says the data series that has emerged over the past week or two since 3I Atlas moved away from the sun and became brighter when observed from Earth is really the key and most intriguing part of the whole story. The new images have revealed jets of material erupting in multiple directions, creating jets so unusual that they have intrigued scientists, surprisingly, until now. No major telescope has directly recorded those jets. All the images that have circulated have come from amateur astronomers. It is this contrast between the magnitude of the phenomenon and the extremely humble origin of the data that makes what is seen from 3I Atlas especially fascinating, clear enough to recognize the anomalies, but not sharp enough to explain, opening up a series of unanswered questions. Professor Loeb also mentioned the hotly debated issue of whether 3I Atlas exhibited a form of anti-gravity acceleration, a type of acceleration that cannot be explained by gravity or the normal evaporation of comets. According to him, calculations are still being done, and so far there is no clear conclusion, but this will be the key to understanding what really happened to 3I Atlas during its approach to the sun. Any signs of unusual acceleration, if confirmed, could lead to controversial hypotheses and even open up the possibility that 3I Atlas does not quite fit the traditional comet model. The crucial moment for the scientific community will come on December 19, when 3I Atlas will make its closest approach to Earth. Hundreds of ground-based telescopes, along with Hubble and James Webb, are expected to be aimed at it, giving it the opportunity to collect data at the highest resolution ever. Professor Loeb stressed that it is that observation period, not any press conference, that will be the key to determining whether 3I Atlas is simply a natural comet or has characteristics that go beyond the familiar pattern. He also frankly said that NASA's recent press conference provided almost no significant information. That unusual silence, Loeb said, has unintentionally made 3I Atlas even more mysterious, especially when the most interesting details are not included in NASA's official announcement. This makes many people wonder if there is something the advanced observation systems are unwilling or unable to reveal, and whether 3I Atlas is hiding a bigger story than what the public is currently aware of. When asked about another controversial issue with the 3I Atlas data, namely the penny lag phenomenon, a term used to describe a delay in interpreting or publishing unusual data, Professor Loeb admitted that this was one of the 12 most prominent anomalies he listed. One of the strangest details was that the telescope detected nickel but no corresponding amount of iron. This goes completely against current astronomical knowledge. As in stellar explosions, nickel and iron are always created in roughly equal proportions, and even in the composition of the sun, iron is more abundant than nickel. However, in 3I Atlas, the first observation recorded nickel alone, and the upper limit represents a ratio of nickel to iron that has never been seen in any comet. Loeb says that when nickel occurs in large amounts, such as from the debris of nickel-rich asteroids, it is always accompanied by iron. There are no natural examples in the universe of materials that are almost entirely nickel and iron-free, except in human industrial environments where nickel alloys are made for aerospace technology. It is this uncanny similarity that prevents him from completely ruling out the possibility that 3I Atlas may have a chemical composition that is not entirely natural. Yet, Loeb says, the official line of reasoning from scientific institutions often operates on a common denominator. Any strange chemical composition can be attributed to an extrasolar origin, as if it were a comet from another star system. But he argues that this approach sometimes overlooks the very anomalies that deserve careful analysis, such as imbalances in the nickel and iron balance, because they suggest a story that goes beyond the classic comet model that has been used for decades. According to Professor Avi Loeb's analysis, the data surrounding 3I Atlas is opening up a new layer of mystery, far beyond the image of a simple interstellar object, and entering the intersection between science and controversial hypotheses about the universe. He believes that the anomaly in the nickel composition of 3I Atlas cannot be ignored, especially when it is completely contrary to the principles of matter formation in supernovae. The discovery of nickel in a particularly high ratio without accompanying iron has challenged the traditional comet model and raised the question of whether this object is really a natural product of the universe. In nature, nickel and iron always form together and never in isolation. The unusual nature of 3I Atlas becomes even more remarkable when Loeb points out that isolated instances of nickel are only known in human industrial settings where nickel alloys are made for aerospace technology. This similarity leads him to question the possibility that 3I Atlas bears the mark of an unnatural formation process, or one not yet fully understood by current science. A bold hypothesis has been put forward that 3I Atlas may have features of an engineered structure, though that does not necessarily confirm its artificial origin. Loeb argues that what is more remarkable is how quickly mainstream scientific bodies have dismissed any anomalies as a safe explanation for interstellar origin, rather than investigating the apparent contradictions with current astronomical understanding, this question becomes even more challenging when juxtaposed with the 12 unusual phenomena Loeb has compiled. Taken individually, each phenomenon might have a plausible explanation, but when combined from the strange nickel composition, the signs of anti-gravity acceleration, the turbulent gas flows, and the prolonged silence from large telescopes, the overall picture no longer fits the category of a typical comet. That leads to bigger questions. Is 3I Atlas a natural product of a vastly different star system, or an ancient technological construct drifting through space? And are these anomalies being deliberately downplayed to avoid a global controversy NASA doesn't want to face? As 3I Atlas approaches Earth on December 19, Loeb believes this will be a crucial period where new data could either clear up all doubts or create one of the most remarkable space stories of the century. Professor Loeb also highlighted an important detail that NASA overlooked the true size of 3I Atlas based on multiple independent measurements. He believes the object is at least 5 kilometers in diameter, or even larger. This puts it in a completely different class, thousands of times larger than Borisov, and millions of times larger than Oumuamua. Statistically, humans should have detected countless smaller objects before encountering such a giant, but the opposite is true. Loeb questioned why such a large object was discovered so late and why it was not highlighted in the press conference. For him, this is the piece that makes the whole story unclear, because such a size hardly fits any natural comet model. Additionally, 3I Atlas's orbit coincides oddly with the plane of the ecliptic, a chance that is only about 1 inch 500. The interstellar object approaches at exactly the right angle for NASA's entire array of telescopes to continuously track it, a coincidence too perfect to ignore. However, this important point was not mentioned by NASA, despite the excitement of observers. Loeb argues that the arrival of such a huge and rare object at a time when humanity has the most powerful observational tools at its disposal is hardly a coincidence. He argues that it came from somewhere else. So it's normal to be different is not enough. Although NASA calls it an unusual comet, they avoid mentioning the very things that make the traditional comet model so inconsistent. If we go by probability logic, Loeb argues that the order of discovery of interstellar objects should be small before moving on to something as massive as 3I Atlas. But the opposite is true. And this is not discussed publicly in his eyes. This is not just a shortcoming, but a major scientific puzzle that NASA should be more transparent about. It is this silence that makes many people wonder, is it a lack of data, a lack of transparency, or something more important? Professor Avi Loeb believes that the most reasonable and honest way to answer questions about 3I Atlas is to admit one obvious fact. This object contains extremely puzzling characteristics. If it is indeed a natural comet, it means that humanity is missing an important link in the understanding of the mechanism of matter formation in the universe. Loeb emphasizes that an object that is both large in size, unusually aligned with the ecliptic plane, and has a composition that is superior to nickel in iron, certainly cannot be explained simply as a strange comet from a distant land. According to him, NASA's failure to mention these factors is a notable omission in their presentation. Loeb does not dispute NASA's assertion that 3I Atlas could be of natural origin. However, he argues that even in this hypothesis, the most important point is left unsaid. If 3I Atlas is indeed natural, It must have been created by a mechanism currently unknown to science. Ignoring this possibility makes the scientific approach more conservative than cautious. During the discussion, a YouTube viewer asked that if extraterrestrial civilizations existed for billions of years, they would have gone far beyond the hypothetical comet spaceships. They might have achieved faster than light technology, teleportation, wormholes, or even interdimensional travel. The primitiveness of these theories made him doubt the possibility that 3I Atlas had a technological origin. Loeb considers this argument to be flawed because it requires forms of technology that go beyond all known physics. He recalls that Einstein's theory of relativity asserts that nothing can travel faster than light, and that no experiment has yet proven otherwise. Asking why no one has ever traveled faster than light is like asking why no one has ever created a square, because it is beyond the scope of modern physics. As for wormholes, Loeb explains that they exist only in theory and require conditions so ideal that they are impractical. Even if they could be created, they themselves lead to time travel paradoxes and violate many fundamental laws. The expectation that a civilization could create a wormhole is a leap beyond anything science knows. Loeb asserts it's impossible to ask why someone wouldn't use a technology we don't even know exists. However, he also argues that humanity doesn't know the true limits of the universe. If unusual objects like 3I Atlas continue to appear, science may be forced to expand what we consider impossible today. When asked why 3I Atlas isn't moving faster, Loeb suggested that this is simply a limitation of the telescope. If an interstellar object were actually moving thousands of times faster than it is currently observed, the telescope would only see a meaningless streak of light, and observers would ignore it. He said this is a selection effect, because we only detect objects that match the sensitivity of our instruments, while much faster objects might be completely invisible to current technology. As for its origins, Loeb admits that science cannot answer where 3I Atlas came from. Its speed only indicates that it is faster than nearby stars. But whether it was ejected from its parent star or was already at this velocity from the initial event is unknown. We cannot deduce the age or history of the object without knowing the ejection mechanism, and this is beyond the understanding of current science when it comes to images of the moon and Mars. Loeb says the current data is good, but limited by the size of the telescope. He hopes future missions will provide much more detailed maps. The biggest question, however, is the jets from 3I Atlas. Despite the object's 16-hour rotation, the jets don't show the expected oscillations or scattering. They're unusually straight and collimated, which Loeb considers one of the biggest puzzles of science. He says science only advances when it confronts anomalies rather than trying to pin them down to normal comet behavior. Many question why NASA took so long to release the first data from 3I Atlas, and why the press conference only showed an image of a rock while the agency remained silent for nearly 50 days. Some even accused NASA of editing the image before releasing it. Loeb said he did not believe NASA was intentionally withholding information, but noted that NASA is a large bureaucracy with many administrative constraints. During a government shutdown, data releases can be delayed, especially for a high-profile interstellar object like 3I Atlas, which requires high-level approval before release. He noted that other space cameras released images of Mars just a day after they were taken, even during the shutdown, but the 3I Atlas images were delayed for 45 days and ultimately revealed nothing special. Loeb said the delay could be a bureaucratic one. Information needs to be checked, synchronized, and approved before being shared with the public. He noted that if this were an academic project, the data would have been processed and released immediately, regardless of whether the university was closed. But in a government environment, employees are required to follow regulations, even when the technical task is simple. In the final Q&A, someone asked if the mysterious radio signal of 1977, the famous wow signal, was related to 3.1 Atlas. Since the direction of emission was said to be similar, Loeb called this a question worth investigating and included it in his list of 12 anomalies. He encouraged radio observatories to continue monitoring 3I Atlas to check for the possibility of artificial signals. Loeb said Meerkat, one of the most powerful radio observatories, had just released a new report. They had observed 3 Atlas on November 5 and determined the upper limit of the radio signal in a certain frequency range. The results showed that if there was a signal, it would be weaker than a cell phone signal. In other words, Loeb said there was no alien phone coming from 3I Atlas on November 5. When asked how long it would take 3I Atlas to reach Earth, if it suddenly changed course or launched a small craft, Professor Loeb replied that at its current speed, such an orbital change would take several months, depending on the extent of the adjustment. He said his team had calculated this possibility in a peer-reviewed scientific paper published in mid-July, asking if 3I Atlas were a technological construct, how much it would need to change its velocity to reach Earth on different target dates. That paper included several scenarios with a graph showing the amount of delta required for each. Another question arises, how can we be sure that the images NASA releases are real and not manipulated? Loeb admits that the public cannot verify this for themselves without access to the original equipment or data stream. He says that science operates on a certain level of trust. Scientists adhere to a code of honor that data should never be falsified. Instances of fraud are rare and severely punished. He believes that if there were any manipulations, they were likely to clarify, not blur, the images. And since the data NASA released this time was not impressive, he doesn't believe they were deliberately trying to hide the data better. Asked if his team would be up all night analyzing the newly released data, Loeb said some of his colleagues would be looking into it as soon as possible. However, he did not expect any major discoveries due to the limited quality of the data. He said the coming weeks, as Atlas 3I gets closer to Earth, would be crucial to gathering valuable information. The interview ended with a thank you from the host, who noted Loeb's candor in analyzing the data and answering a series of questions from viewers. Loeb responded that he always speaks his mind and does not hold back. The interview ended with appreciation and anticipation for future updates on 3I Atlas. The conversation with Professor Avi Loeb is over, but its echoes still resonate in the series of unanswered questions surrounding 3I Atlas, from the anomalies in its structure, orbit, and chemical composition, to the inexplicable lag in NASA data. This interstellar object is the most curious topic of the scientific community and space enthusiasts. Maybe 3I Atlas is just a special comet, or maybe it is the piece of the puzzle that will force us to expand all that seems certain about the universe. Whatever the final answer, one thing is clear: the journey to deciphering it has only just begun. If you want to follow more in-depth analysis, latest updates, and lively debates surrounding 3I Atlas, don't forget to subscribe to the channel Like and leave a comment with your views. Who knows? Your question might be the starting point for further scientific research.